President Trump has reportedly slowed down his timetable for withdrawing troops from Syria, but earlier today he told reporters at the White House that he's standing by his decision to leave. Watch.
Syria was lost long ago. It was lost long ago. And besides that, I don't know. We're talking about sand and death. That's what we're talking about. We're not talking about, vast wealth. We're talking about sand and death.
All right. The president also claimed he, quote, essentially fired former Defense Secretary James Mattis for his handling of the situation in Afghanistan, and said he also criticized his current generals for their military advice in Syria. Well, if that didn't ruffle enough feathers at the Department of Defense, he concluded by suggesting he himself would have made a good general, because go big or go home in 2019. So when are we leaving Syria? And perhaps the bigger question is, why? Joining me now, former CIA officer and host of the Buck Sexton Show. It's a podcast. It is award-winning. Buck Sexton is here. Welcome back.
It's a radio show, too. Thanks for having me, Kennedy.
It's a great radio show.
Thank you.
So, Buck, let's talk a little bit about this, because it seems to be very difficult to get out of Syria. Describe that process.
Well, I think you've seen more facets of the Syria discussion because of the way that President Trump just kind of dropped on the American people, the Pentagon, the military, that he wanted a rapid withdrawal, because now he's agreed to slow this down. And you remember we had this conversation before Christmas, Kennedy, and I was saying that that was the part of this that I could understand people having real trepidation about, that you don't, yes, the mission should not be presence in Syria forever, U.S. troops on the ground for a whole bunch of reasons we can get into in a second. But it also can't be, all right, you're all out tomorrow. There are safety concerns. There are logistics issues with removing even a few thousand troops from a theater like Syria. So he is bowing to the wisdom of the folks around him, in a sense, by saying we're going to wait a little more. But what you've also seen is, OK, if it's going to take at least 60, maybe 90, maybe 120 days to get these troops out of Syria because of how entrenched the presence is there, because of the facilities that have been built up. And you also hear a lot of people talking about how the mission set is to counter Iran. Now you can get an understanding of why it is that there was so much discomfort with what the mission was becoming, which was a permanent or semi-permanent U.S. forward operating base in Syria, in a country in the midst of a civil war that Assad has won, by the way. So this notion of we're going to balance things out with Iran, I just don't think that's based in reality. No,
you're right. And you make a really good point. Just how difficult it is to extricate ourselves from a place like Syria that is already incredibly complex to begin with a civil war. But then you have these strange shifting alliances, and it's really difficult to know whose side we're on and who is on our side. So it's almost harder getting out than it is getting in, which goes to, I think, the most important point, which is that we shouldn't be there in the first place.
Well, obviously, there are much bigger long-term risks than I think a lot of people who just talk about how we need to make sound decisions and project American policy and we have these obligations. Platitudes are not very helpful when you're talking about people who are in a combat zone. That I know we haven't lost a lot of troops in Syria, but anybody with any familiarity about what happened under the Reagan administration in Lebanon knows that all it takes is one really bad day and you could lose a few hundred U.S. troops in a place like Syria.
Well, and we also don't talk a lot about the civilians there who have lost their lives.
Yeah, I mean, the Syrian civil war has killed now close to 600,000 people, and we are late arrivals in this. Look, the mission was to defeat the Islamic State. People have gotten into parsing whether they're just on the run or defeated or cornered, but they no longer hold territory. We've gotten an agreement now, according to the administration, to keep the Turks from beating up on the Kurds, which was a very real concern, and I do think that...
Can we trust the Turks, though, when they say that?
I don't think we can ever really trust the Turkish government, which is a shame because they're a NATO ally and they're supposed to be right alongside, the Brits and the French and others in terms of trustworthy folks.
Kick them out of NATO.
But they, I think that maybe we should start to rattle that saber a little bit and say that they're not really a worthy NATO ally. But here's the thing. People were so upset about what was going on with Trump in Syria initially, and now a little bit of time has passed, and apart from the Mattis resignation, which is another part of this discussion, looks like we're actually going to have, I think, the best possible outcome, which once again goes to why people shouldn't be tweeting out or posting. I mean, they could say whatever they want, but, we weren't about to hit DEFCON 1. Nuclear war was not imminent because Trump had suggested we're going to have a rapid pullout from Syria. There has been some moving around.
I don't know if I've heard anyone talking about a nuclear war. But I do see...
I meant hyperbole there,
okay.
but yes.
Well, no, because they were talking about nuclear
with North
war
Korea.
with North Korea.
Yes,
absolutely.
That's true.
And there's no shortage of hyperbole or crap storms.
It's all going to be okay, Kennedy. That's what I keep telling people. The president is not actually a maniac who seeks the destruction of the entire planet. He's actually trying to do the best job he can. And his instincts...
I don't know. I read Mitt Romney's op-ed. I think it's much worse than that.
That was weak sauce. But his instincts on places like Syria and Afghanistan, I'm not going to pretend that he has the deep background to break down all the different tribes of
thank God
Helmand
he's got
province.
You there.
But he has the right instincts on what the U.S. should be focused on and doing on these issues. And with a little bit of help and a little bit of policy guidance, we get to the right outcomes, which is all we really want from the Trumpster.
Outcomes. Buck Sexton, thank you so much.
Good to see you.
Very good.